Oh, welcome, Francis here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. There is a subscribe button below if you'd like to help support my channel by subscribing. Also a bell to be notified as to when I upload more content. I'm coming to you from Ghana country, and as such, I acknowledge the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians. So in previous sort of lunar updates, I have mentioned the significance of the outer planets sort of moving into new signs this year. And I thought I might just sort of like put together hopefully a short video, just sort of exploring these transits a little deeper, because it's definitely something that doesn't usually happen every day and even every couple of months or years. It is quite rare for the amount of outer planets that we have shifting. And just a disclaimer that if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I'm not an astrologer. I just have an interest in astrology. And please check out the astrologers that I list below who sort of inspire me and sort of give me a little bit more of really an insight as to why I'm trying to figure out why the energies are sort of like affecting us as they do. So if you do listen to other sort of like spiritual teachers or astrologers, these sort of like transits from these outer planets are sort of getting a lot of people excited, and they are talking about the sort of new world sort of happening. But let's sort of break that down. Firstly, when people talk about the outer planets, especially within astrology, what they're talking about is sometimes they include Jupiter in it, but we're looking at Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And these planets tend to represent sort of more broader generational shifts and collective evolution of the human species, hopefully, impacting sort of societal trends and cultural landscapes, as opposed to what's known as the inner planets, which are the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, which tend to sort of influence us on an individual or daily basis. The outer planets take, because they're out of our, so we're looking at their journey around the Sun, they are the wider realms, so they take longer to change, move through signs, as opposed to, say, the Moon that takes 2.5 days. Pluto changes signs only every 15 to 30 years, and it takes 248 years to make one complete sort of cycle through all the zodiac signs. Neptune changes signs every 13 to 14 years and takes 165 years to go through the whole sort of zodiacal sort of as wheel. Uranus takes 7 years to change signs and 84 years to go through the whole zodiac cycle. So for having all these planets plus Saturn also changing signs within what is it relatively a very small or short period of time, okay, we are looking at a couple of months, is quite significant. And the fact that they'll stay in these signs for a while now, a number of years, there is the potential, due to the energetics of them bringing around new change. And this is a big deal, I guess. We're looking at it because it affects, as I said, us on a more of a collective level. There's also other things to be aware of within astrology, and that's in particular that the astrological signs fall within 4 elements. So we've got earth, air, fire, and water. And these sort of are aligned with the sort of the commencement of the seasons. Of course, this is all based in the Northern Hemisphere. And there's also 3 different modalities, so cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So we've got, say, 4 cardinal signs, one for each element. So we have Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So Aries is cardinal fire, beginning of the first fire sign. Cancer is the first water sign, beginning of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Libra is the first air sign, which is beginning of autumn. And then we've got Capricorn, which is the cardinal earth sign, beginning of winter in the Northern Hemisphere. The fixed signs fall in, say, the midpoint of each season. So Taurus is fixed, is in the spring. Leo, so that's fixed earth. Leo is fixed fire, so that's in the middle of summer. Scorpio is fixed water in autumn, and then Aquarius is fixed air in winter. And then finally, the mutable signs, which are the ones that are connected with the end of each season for the Northern Hemisphere, and which means they are sort of more adaptable and flexible, and also focus on this sort of transition from the very fixed signs through into the cardinal signs. So the mutable signs are Gemini at the end of spring, Virgo at the end of summer, Sagittarius at the end of autumn, and Pisces at the end of winter. Of course, for us in the Southern Hemisphere, the seasons don't really matter or have such a huge importance. We can sort of change them around a little bit, but then they're a little bit skewed if they don't sort of work out properly. Anyway, that sort of gives you a little bit of an idea between, well, when astrologers talk about sort of fixed signs and mutable signs and cardinal signs, and so something that's fixed air, that's what they're talking about. So coming back to these transits, these outer planets and why they're important. On the 30th of March, we had Neptune enter Aries. So Aries is cardinal fire. It is sort of like Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. It means that with Neptune entering Aries, and then more recently on the 24th of May, we had Saturn also entering Aries. So these two planets, they're not quite conjunct, but they're almost conjunct. They're between 0 and 2 degrees of Aries, and this sort of point area is known as the world axis point or the Aries point, meaning that what happens here, there is the potential for it being on the public stage, on the world axis. This is also the point that's associated with the potentiality of birthing the new. So whether it's something personal or collective. So if you have a copy of your birth or natal chart, just see if you've got any planets or points around 0 to 2 degrees of not only Aries, but any cardinal signs. And as Pam Gregory points out, these are all going to be aspected to the Saturn-Neptune, so say a loose conjunction, meaning that they will be in conjunction, or they'll be square, which is 90 degrees, or they'll be in opposition, which is 180 degrees, of these two planets, which in turn will result in these planets or points that you have in your chart being activated over the coming months, which in turn means that you're going to be feeling this energy. So we have Saturn and Neptune at 1 and 2 degrees of Aries at the start of the zodiac or the astrological wheel. Their exact conjunction is going to be happening in February next year, to 2026. So while Saturn will be staying between the 0 and 2 degrees point until the beginning of September, it'll be coming back to this point again in January, February next year, again sort of activating at this point as it moves forward, then it retrogrades back. So Saturn, looking at Saturn, it is all about doing the work. It's about responsibility. It's about structure or foundational changes, because it's right at that beginning point. So it's like saying you're building a new house, you wanted to build a new house. It's about preparing the ground and laying your foundation upon which you will build everything else. It can also be seen as the great alchemist, because it's offering us an opportunity to, I guess, turn lead into gold. And it's all about creation as well, but we're needing to put that work into. So there's going to be these themes that will be coming up, especially as it moves through Aries globally. But it also will be triggering any other planet and point, in particular in that house, that area of life, that will be squaring, which is 90 degrees, or opposing 180 to it. And of course, when it brings things up, this is things usually from the past, from the deep, murky waters, that needs to be either transmuted or changed. Conjunct to it, so next door to each, we have Neptune. So as Neptune is in conjunction, square, or opposition to any planets or points you have in your chart, this could also bring in a degree of confusion, disappointment, disillusionment, even deception. This is sort of lower level energy of Neptune. However, it's also connected in with, again, creativity of all kinds, sort of like a high energy. And it goes even beyond what we may perceive to be as possible, even our current reality. So it's almost encouraging us as we lay our foundations for Saturn to think beyond what our realization is. It's almost like being open to change. It's also a reminder not to sort of act too quickly, because there is this delusional aspect. And I think this is what Saturn's wanting us to sort of be a little bit more cautious as these sort of new ideas are coming through, because it could lead to this sort of disappointment. So we're seeing this really interesting dynamic happening between, say, the tangible and the solidness, what we're familiar with, which is Saturn, and almost the ethereal, the invisible, the airy-fairiness of Neptune. There is a positive expression that Pam Gregory gives to this making real the dream, sort of earthing our dream, bringing it into reality. So again, if you have your natal or birth chart, look to see what houses this conjunction of Saturn, Neptune is in Aries. This is also making sure that the dream is not some pie in the sky wishful thinking, because Saturn is all about practicality. It's about being realistic for the long term. These are the new structures, as I said, the new foundations upon which we are building this new dream to bring it into reality, to sort of grounding it. There is also the sort of etheric influence of Neptune, encouraging us to sort of master the invisible. Maybe our future reality is not, or should not be, completely based on our perception of reality now, of here and now. It's just like leaving that sort of room open for the potential. And also recognizing that energy is at the core of everything. And I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. We're energetic beings. We live in an energetic world and part of an energetic cosmos, which means that our energy, our personal energy, has an impact on the energy around us, as well as part of the greater whole. And we also need to sort of be aware that we can be influenced by the external energy of the greater whole as well. So this could be where the disillusionment or the disappointment comes in as well. So it's about becoming more sort of consciously aware of our energy input and output, taking mastery and responsibility of it, instead of just brushing things away. Now, sort of focusing on the fixed modality, which are the signs of, say, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, which are all sort of known for their stability, their consistency, the ability to sort of maintain, preserve. These are signs that sort of provide a grounding force and anchoring to the energy that initiated by the cardinal signs, which we've just been talking about. We've got Pluto between 0 and 2 degrees of Aquarius. Aquarius is fixed air. And Pluto moved into Aquarius properly November last year, 2024. So if you have any planets or points in fixed modalities, you will be receiving an activation from Pluto. And Pluto is all about endings. It's about conclusions, combinations of things in order for the new to emerge. And while it may appear to be sort of external forces of control or manipulation, when it comes to these aspecting planets and points in your chart, ultimately it's about self-empowerment. Looking at, again, at your own energy, your own boundaries, what you're giving away to others, to other situations. It also marks major milestones, especially in one's life, often brought about through deep soul level transformation that can be really sort of emotionally lonely, sort of dark night of the soul material, where we feel encouraged to sort of surrender to the death of the old in order for the new to be reborn. And when we do this, this brings about the permanent changes. And the final modality is mutable, which is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. These signs are known for their adaptability, their flexibility. There's sort of a transition between the different phases and perspectives, sort of representing the end of each season and the preparation of the next. They are also often called chameleons. The zodiacs, due to their sort of fluid or mutable, adaptable nature. And as such, we have Uranus moving into Gemini, or has just moved into Gemini about a month ago on the 7th of July. So it's around 0 degrees of Gemini, which is mutable air. So in contrast to the deep sort of permanent changes that Pluto brings around, Uranus is linked to that sort of sudden lightning flash radical change. It's about breaking old stale patterns or routines that no longer serve us. It's also about disruptions that come through very quickly, out of our control. When Uranus transits, these transits can actually make us feel very restless and agitated. It's important to note that when they come through, it's because we are needing to make these changes, and they will be happening regardless. Sometimes it's better to go with the flow than try to fight against them. Uranus is also linked to liberation and personal freedoms, being of the higher mindset of the universe. It's also connected in with revelations. So over the next few months, we have a lot of planetary energy that is encouraging, supporting us to sort of shed the old and step into the new. So now is probably a good time, if you haven't already started doing it, is to really sit down and think about who do you want to become. Not only on a personal level, as a lot of sort of social media influences still dictated at, but when it comes to also part of the collective. Remember that we are all energetic beings and we are all still interconnected with the greater whole. So what role are you prepared to step up into that will support the collective, especially as we are all going through these huge changes that I would say most people are aware of. You don't need to be highly spiritual to be aware that there are changes happening. But it's like sort of managing them the best. We're seeing a lot of, I guess we could call it shadow, unprocessed trauma, outdated limitations and beliefs being projected on us. And a lot of these is largely based on fear. We see a lot of outdated control, manipulation now, and clear sight. So this is the Saturn Neptune on the world axis of Aries. This is sort of like the personality out there, no longer hiding. And it's really interesting when we listen to the words that are being used, especially on the world stage. I'm not going to name names, but many of these words are outdated, egotistical, sort of bully boy antics. There are threats and tantrums, very sort of narcissistic behavior. It's very self-focused, very I am, which again is Aries, but it's the individual. It's not the collective. And that's interesting to look back. There is also it's becoming increasingly important for us to, I guess, I'll say not completely hide or turn off and ignore what is happening. I know there is a lot of sort of pain and trauma and, should we say, heavy energy, so say heavy energy around. And you can get to feel overwhelmed, and it is very overwhelming. It's very saddening, very disappointing. And again, this is the influence of Neptune, saying disappointment coming in. And it's just like, yes. Especially as the old sort of rhetoric is being repeated. The slowness it is to come to the party. The sort of like, not going to make a move until someone else does it because it might show on us. Especially when it's standing up for the whole. So we're seeing that happening as well. So I think it's easy, or it is sometimes used as a way of self-preservation to ignore what's happening globally. But again, we are all part of the collective. What's some of the better ways of when you feel that sort of sense of overwhelm is like, yes, come back to the self, come back to your heart, and then counteract that negativity by projecting out love, compassion, and adding that to the collective energy. It might sound a little bit new agey, but that way you're still contributing, being aware, but not taking on that heavier energy, or transmuting that heavier energy, because we can, if we are consciously aware, we can sort of take in that heavier energy, transmute it into lighter energy, and then project that back out. And that's important because it will enable the shift in consciousness that everybody's sort of talking about with this brave new world, but we cannot birth the brave new world while we've still got it surrounded by this heavy energy, because we just are going to be dragging that heavier energy into the future, which is the energy that we have been dragging in from the past through this unresolved trauma that we have been circulating through. So from I think the 11th of August, we will see 4 outer planets: Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, that, as I said, are all sort of focusing on the collective. These are all going to be in trines and sextiles to each other. So these are all positive alignments. And this is why people are talking about the sort of new world. But as I said, and I'm seeing it more in spiritual circles, and maybe it's just my perspective, but I think there is a danger of spiritual bypassing when we just sort of like focus on the new world and ignore what's happening around us. And so spiritual bypassing, it's almost like a place of privilege, especially if we're not in these areas of trauma, pain, as in other parts of the world. They definitely can't be focusing on a new future when you're ducking for cover because you fear that you might be bombed or shot at. Even in parts of the Western world, when people are struggling to find money to pay their bills, or whether they have a home to live in, or how they're going to feed their families, they can't be focusing on the new world. So I think there needs to come back to this point of balance. Yes, we can sort of like focus on the new world or this new energetics coming through, but we also need to sort of earth it and help everybody else as much as we can. And the best way we can do that without sort of draining our own selves, because it can be these feelings of overwhelm, is the skill of transmutation. And I think of a Tong-Lem practice, which is sort of very similar in a way, and I'll put a link below because I'm just doing this off the cuff, where you sort of, it's an act of forgiveness or mutation of the energies. And again, it's sort of like taking in the pain and the hurt of others, but not into our own energetics where we are taking that on board. But what we're doing is sort of like taking into a space where it can be mutated into love or earthed, put it into the earth and transformed into compassion, love, and then projected back out. So that's, and I'm going down a rabbit hole, so I might end now. So that's a little bit about these sort of four greater outer planets and their influences. It'll be interesting to see what this sort of like emerges or evolves over the next couple of months into next year, then over the next few years, when the energetics start to really sort of take hold. I think it's also a reminder that we are not individuals, completely individuals, that we are interconnected. I think this is one of the dangers of, in particular, Uranus. It is sort of all about the mind, the higher self, of it being in Gemini as well, which is also an air sign. We can lose a sight or connectedness that we are here on the earth plane. There's a reason why we're here, why our souls has incarnated during these times. And that is because we're going through this period of transition. So instead of getting sort of caught up in the heavier negative energy, where the sort of the self-preservation is to run away or to spiritually bypass, to not hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, be brave, take that energy, transmute it into love, and then project it back out. And the more that you do that, and the more people that do that, we will see the shift from the heavy to all that gets pushed into the earth, where Mother Earth takes it in rather like compost, and she transforms it as well. And will see the sort of rebirth of the new world that everybody is talking about. And if you feel overwhelmed, so just sort of practice taking in the energy, grounding it, breathing in the light or the energy from the earth, and pushing it back out. And that way you are part of the flow and the conduit of the energy, because the energy it's almost like water in a stream. When the stream gets dammed, the water then stagnates. When we don't move the energy through, it stagnates. What we need to do now is have more people moving the dark energy that is rising up, that is coming out, because it's almost like a sore that's been infected that needs to be lanced. This is what's happening. So we need more and more people, not to go into the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, not my circus, not my monkeys, But just quietly spend a few moments every day just visualizing, taking this energy, transmuting it, giving it to Mother Earth to compost it, and bringing in the light, and then projecting it back out into the earth again. So if you've got any thoughts about what I've just said in this video, please put them below. Is this something that you've been doing? I'll be interested to know, especially if you've been having the experience of the transmutation of the energy. If there's any other practices that you are doing that benefit you, please share them below, because we are in these times where I think we need to move from the this is mine and only mine to more of a we, for the good of all, the benefit of all. Blessings.